A very good evening. Thank you for joining into today's session. So we are into the third edition of the IATD Alumni Book Club, and I'm happy to host the IATD Alumni Book Club today. Today we will be looking at a very interesting book called Vylearn by Ken Blanchard. So this is the book. This is actually a very small yet a very powerful book. It has an amazing message which serves not just for how to handle people at your workplace but also how to handle your family life. And in this particular book, Ken Blanchard has taken a very interesting approach on how to handle these kind of situations using a very interesting story. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we will start with today's session. Okay, so the book today is Vylearn, and for people who are joining today's session for the first time, I am the host and the presenter for today. So I am Vytheeshwaran Vedagiri, the founder and principal learning consultant at Vylearn, and we will go into today's session. So this particular book talks about the story of one gentleman by the name Wes Kingsley. So Wes Kingsley is an executive. So he faces a lot of challenges in his workplace with managing his team and taking them forward, keeping them motivated, and all those things. So he is a man who is a little bit disturbed with all these things and he is stressed out. So he happens to attend a conference in Orlando, and he uses this as an excuse to escape from his office environment and do something for a change. And when he comes to Orlando, he visits this water theme park where they have these shows put up by killer whales. So this place is called Sea World. So they have these shows that feature these killer whales doing a lot of acrobatics and a lot of tricks along with their trainers. So Wes watches the show and he is very impressed. And the question that comes to his mind is, how are these trainers able to train killer whales and make them do what they want them to do? And I'm sitting here and I am not able to control a bunch of people. So he takes his curiosity to the next level. He goes and meets the trainer, one of the trainers by the name Dave Yardley. And Dave Yardley introduces him to the person who he claims to be training him, which is Shamu, the killer whale. So Wes asks him, how do you train a killer whale? So Dave Yardley goes about and explains how the entire process works, and he tells them that he even gives a very interesting example of what will happen when we go and when a child does a mistake. So when a child does a mistake, when a child goes and breaks something or touches something that they shouldn't be touching, parents, what we typically do is we grab them away, we scold them for whatever mistake that they do, we warn them and all those kind of things. But when it comes to a killer whale, and oftentimes, before I even go to the killer whale, see, oftentimes when we tell our kids, don't do this, the kids are more inclined to go and try that once again. So what happens in the case of a killer whale? A killer whale is not going to really understand what you're saying, and a killer whale doesn't really care for that. And with one snap, it can snuff you out. So and this killer whale is basically in an unfamiliar environment. They're not used to interacting with humans. So how do you go and train a killer whale? What is that which works with killer whales? So Dave Yardley goes about and explains how it works. So he talks about the 3 steps. The first step is to build trust. This is the fundamental of any relationship, be it at workplace, be it at home. The first thing that you need to do is build trust, because only when you build trust, the person who is sitting opposite to you is actually going to listen to what you're going to say. Now, if you don't have that element of trust, he may hear you, but he won't be listening to you. There's a big difference between that. And the next is obviously to accentuate the positive. So, when you say accentuate the positive, you must consciously look out for any positive aspect, any positive attribute, any positive action that the other person is performing. You must look out for that, because one of the common things that we do is when we look at a person, be it at home or be it at workplace, when things are going right, we often don't take much notice of it because things are going right. It's good. That's the way things should go, and it's going. That's fine. But when things go wrong, that's when we take notice. That's when we start raising our voice. That's when we start taking notice of what people are doing. So he says, accentuate the positive. Look for positives and try to accentuate the positive. Try to highlight those positives. It may be their day-to-day routine, but still, if it is a positive, accentuate it. And the third thing is, when mistakes occur, mistakes do occur. We are all humans after all. So when mistakes occur, when mistakes occur, redirect the energy. So when he says redirect the energy, this actually means that when a mistake happens, don't focus on that. Redirect their energy into what exactly you want them to do. So if they make a mistake and if there is something that goes wrong, there is no point in crying over spilt milk. So if the other person is making a mistake, yes, the mistake has been done. What is that you want? What is that you actually want? Is your objective highlighting the mistake and shouting at them, or is your objective to get the job done? Of course, by this, the author also clarifies and says that by this, they are not saying that you need to ignore the mistake. You need to tell that the mistake has been happened. You need to recognize that, but redirect the energy to the corrective direction. So these are the 3 steps that Mr. Yardley takes when he approaches his killer whales for training. So Mr. Wes Kingsley is still not sure. So he is like, okay, all of this sounds fine, but I don't know how this can actually be connected to humans, how I can use it in my workplace. So at this time, what Mr. Dave Yardley does, he picks up his phone and he calls someone. And that someone is Annie Mary. So Annie Mary is one of the most sought out speakers. She is a professional consultant and a coach, and she is a person who goes to a lot of industries and implements good practices for them as a consultant. And she is one of the most sought out person. And this person, this Dave Yardley, calls Annie Mary to her mobile, and he hands the phone over to Wes and asks him, okay, you talk to her. So Annie Mary says that she was in the same position as Wes Kingsley is at the moment a few years back. When she had visited with one of her training group to Orlando, she saw those whales and she had those exact same questions when she talked with Dave Yardley, and she realized that a lot of the methods that she has been using with her clients is actually what Mr. Dave Yardley has been using with the killer whales. So she got more affirmation on the method that she used, and after talking to Mr. Dave, she has tweaked her approach and she calls it the whale done approach. So what Miss Annie does is she invites Wes. Wes is originally from Atlanta, and Annie is also from Atlanta, and apparently Annie is giving a speech for an audience the following Monday, and she invites Wes to attend. So Wes goes back, thanks Dave, he goes back to Atlanta and he attends this program. And that's where Annie starts talking about the ABCs. So A is the activator. Essentially, what activates a B, which is behavior. And what is the C? That is the consequence. So what is the activator? So an activator is something that is going to stimulate a behavioral response in someone. And when that behavior happens, what is the consequence of that behavior? So this is the cycle that we need to constantly reflect upon when we are interacting with people, and when we are crafting our interactions, and when we are crafting our instructions to people. And there she says that when there is an issue, there could be several ways of responding to it. One, you don't have to respond, there is no response, or there could be a negative response. So this is something that we typically encounter when something bad happens. We either try to ignore it, or we try to give a negative response to it. So apparently both of these don't really work. So what Annie does is she conducts a small activity. In fact, as trainers, this is something that you can do as well in your sessions. So what she does is she gets the audience to stand up, and she asks them to look at the next person and ask them to just greet them and inquire how they are in a very nonchalant manner, in a way like as if it is a formality and you have to do it. So people just shake hands and say hello, how are you, and all of that. And as a next activity, as a second part of the activity, she asks these people to turn to the same person and welcome them as if they are a long lost friend, and you really, really want to welcome them and talk to them. And the room gets really excited. So she asks which method is something that you like, and obviously everyone liked the second way. So that is the power of being a positive person. When you are positive, you spread positivity around. When you're negative, negativity spreads. So when you give a negative response to a bad situation, it is not going to end well. You're only spreading the negativity. Instead, what Annie suggested was you can practice redirection and positive response. So instead of having no response, that is basically ignoring, and giving a negative response, she recommends redirection and positive response. So what is redirection over here? So redirecting is nothing but you start by describing what went wrong. But what we typically do is when we describe what went wrong, we usually say you did this wrong, you did this and this happened. So she recommends that when you describe something that went wrong, you need to be absolutely professional about it. Just state the facts, not opinions. Don't blame people. It could be their fault, but don't blame. Just state what went wrong and then show the negative impact that has been caused because of the wrongdoing, so that people can really understand the consequence. So here you are demonstrating the action, the behavior, and the consequence without highlighting the person who has committed the mistake. And then here's the trick. If appropriate, you take the blame for not clarifying it enough for the other person. So let's say that you are a manager and you are working with a person, with your subordinate, and if that person has committed an error in the task that you have allocated to him or her. So what she says is, you take the blame. Maybe I didn't clarify this enough for you. So let me take another moment and clarify this for you. And go over the tasks in detail to ensure that the understanding is thorough. Because this is something that's very important. And last but not the least, once you have done that, express your continuing trust and confidence in that person. This may seem like I'm describing a perfect world over here, because that's exactly what Wes Kingsley also felt. Is this something practical? But it is practical. It works. Wes realizes it as we go through the book. Wes puts all these into practice, and this actually works for him. And one of the reasons why I'm reviewing this particular book today is because when I was working and heading a team, I went through this book because I was kind of lost with my team as well. I went through this book and I implemented these methods, and they worked personally for me. And that's one of the reasons this is one of my favorite books, and I'm talking about this particular book to you today. So this is not just Wes Kingsley's story, this is also my story. So then she talks about the gotcha versus the well done approach. So essentially, gotcha approach is you highlighting the person's mistakes. So it's as if you're waiting to see where this person goes wrong. Or when you are looking at a person, you are searching for all the mistakes that they've done. And this is something that we have typically seen in a lot of places. And a lot of us might even be guilty of doing that. And in fact, one of the classic examples that come to my mind is performance appraisals. So as a manager, when you are doing performance appraisal, we immediately, the first thing that we look for is, okay, so are there any negative remarks? Are there any performance issues? Are there any escalations? So this is what Anne-Marie calls the gotcha approach. Whereas a well done approach is something where you highlight and accentuate the positives. So again, when I say accentuate the positive, it doesn't mean you will have to accentuate or highlight a person only when he succeeds or does something correctly. Even if the person takes one step in the right direction, that in itself is well done. Because as long as the person is in the right path, you can be rest assured that with the right support, they will get where they need to go. Because be it at home or at a workplace, what is it that people want? What is it that you and I want? We want to have good relationships. Humans are social animals. We want good relationships. We want good rapport. And we want to be recognized. We want everyone to like us. We want everyone to talk to us. We want everyone to socialize with us. How will that happen? You get what you give. You give good thoughts. You give good recognition. You get that back. That is exactly the essence of this book. Because the subtitle of the book is The Power of Positive Relationships. So if you are positive, you are going to get back positivity. But is this a flawless method? No. Is this method going to go silky smooth from start to finish? You just implement this tomorrow and your life is going to change? No. There will be resistance. But the trick is for you to stick on, to stay on with the well done approach. Have complete trust on this method and keep pushing. Your non-believers will ultimately become your biggest advocates. That is the beauty of the well done approach. So, how do you give a well done response? So, we saw how to give a negative response. How do you give a well done response? A well done response consists of immediate praise. When you see something good happening, immediately give a praise. It can be as simple as you sit down in the morning, you get your breakfast. You just have a bite of your breakfast. You really like the taste. Immediately turn around and say, if it is your wife or if it is your husband who is cooking, just say, the food is wonderful. Thank you. You have done a brilliant job today. It feels so good. This is the first one. And it could be from anything. As simple as making a single dosa to a person who works on a very complex project. Even the smallest win, even the smallest success, recognize and praise it. And be specific. Don't give a generic praise. Specify as to what exactly you like about that particular progress or that particular improvement or win that they have made. The reason for you to be specific is because when you are specific with your response, the person who is getting this message from you knows that you intend to praise them. There is intent in your message. It is not just a praise. It is an intentional praise. You know what exactly they have done. You have clear cognizance of what has happened, and you know why exactly this person deserves a praise. And when you are able to communicate that to the other person, it sticks. And share your positive feelings. Express it in words. Say why exactly you feel good about it and good about them. And of course, encourage them to keep up the good work. This is something that's very, very important. You'll have to make sure that they stick to the message and they continue what they are doing and go in the same path. Because when you look at life, success is a goalpost that always keeps changing positions. What is success today will become an expectation tomorrow. So this is something that is very, very important for us to remember. We want people to strive in the direction of success. We want people to win, because only when the people around us start winning, we win. Because today we live in a world where the word competition has lost meaning. Today we live in a world of cooperation. We live in a world of partnerships. We live in a world of trust. There is a new word called co-opetition. We compete together and we win together. And this particular book, Vylearn, gives you the perfect recipe on how to make this happen. And this book also goes on further to talk about how Wes applies this at home with his two daughters and how he applies it at his workplace. So he talks about how he was able to improve his relationship with his wife Joy and his daughters Meg and Ali. So he takes his family to Orlando for a vacation. They go to the whale show, and then he makes his family meet with Dave. And of course, like any family, there are some internal domestic squabbles between the husband and wife, between the parents and the kids. And they sit together as a family after talking to Dave, and they take this commitment of adopting the Vylearn approach, and they follow the same steps. And in a week, they are able to see how their relationship has transformed. However, the story of Wes at the workplace wasn't so easy. Some people accepted his Vylearn approach, some people didn't. Some people made fun of him. They even went to the extent of going behind his back and escalating it to his boss, saying that Wes has become soft and sales numbers are falling. And Wes starts doubting himself. He talks to Anne-Marie again, and then Anne-Marie says, you continue on this path. You have faith, you have trust, you continue on this path. Things will fall in place, and ultimately it does. The same people who went behind Wes's back come back to Wes and say, we need your help. We want to work with you. We are in search for appreciation, because people who go behind other people's back and talk, they will get short-term success, but on the long term, it doesn't really work. It is cooperation, partnerships, and partnerships built with trust that ultimately wins the day for everyone. So the story goes on to talk about how exactly Wes embraces these two people and continues on the journey and succeeds as a professional and as a successful husband and a successful father. So this is a very short book. It's around 123 pages. A very short book, but it is so rich with messaging. So I would really urge you all to read it. I've given a very short snippet of what exactly this book does and what is there in it for you. So please go ahead and read this book. It's an amazing book. I'm sure you will find it extremely enriching. And this is something, the other reason why I particularly like this book is because the pointers that are there in this particular book is something that you can start applying immediately, and you will start seeing its effects immediately as well. It's not like a plan that you need to draft and do a long term kind of a thing. You need to invest a lot of time and effort into it. The tips in this book are really, really simple, and it goes a long way in making your relationships at your workplace and at your personal life really work for you. So I highly recommend this book. It's a wonderful book. It's a very short book. You can just pick it up and probably spend about an hour. You'll be done with this book. It's an amazing book to read, and it's something that I have practically applied in my professional life, and it has really changed me to be a better person and a better manager when I was working with my previous organization. So that brings us to the end of this very short book review. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. I'd love to answer some of them for you.
Hi, Vaiti. I don't have any questions actually, but again, it was very interesting in terms of the way you narrated. And also, what I would like to say is that most of the things we all know, but it's more organized. That is, it makes us realize that though we know all these, we don't really implement it. So that's very,
Exactly.
very interesting. And also, I like the way you said, you spoke about intentional praise, though there is no such word in English, but again, that carries a lot of meaning because
Yes.
because in this social media uh, world of social media, people mindlessly press likes, whether they understand anything or not. It is just likes. So we really don't realize what is being said. We really don't comprehend what is being said, and just press that like button. So when
Very
we
true.
praise somebody, it should come straight from the heart, and also it should mean a lot, both to us and to the other person. And very, very well presented. A nice book indeed. I would like to read it soon. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And I think, like you said, these are things that we all know, and these are things that actually we expect others to do. Just that we are not cognizant of that. So when this is put in a nice format for us, and when we start thinking about this in a very conscious manner and applying this in a conscious manner, it transforms us from being um, consciously competent to unconsciously competent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you, sir.
introducing this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Any other remarks? Okay. So if there are no more questions from anyone, I guess today's session is going to be very short, just like this book. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a note on my contact, or I mean, you all have my number. So please do that, and I'll be happy to respond to you. And once again, highly recommend you read this book. It's a wonderful book. Thank you all, and have a wonderful evening.